Captain, a vessel approaching.
On screen.
We're being hailed.
Every weekend over at GearWebsites.com, our online store, we have free Patch Friday. And that means that every order placed on our store on Fridays is going to include at least one free patch. So that's every order with no coupons, no minimum order, no codes needed. You place the order on Friday, and when it arrives to you, it's going to have at least one free patch. Your support means a lot to us, and financial support is critical. So thanks again to the people who keep us online through purchases at GearWebsites.com.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Just have to unmute. Welcome everybody to another episode of Ask Gun Questions. We're doing it in the vertical for the phones this week. We're on the Instagram, and I chopped these up into shorts, so I figured this might be an interesting way to approach it. So let us know what you think. Give us some feedback on it. We go live on Saturdays and answer gun questions that come into the website, askgunquestions.com. One of these days I'll find my intro again, and I won't have to explain this. But we got Tony joining us from New Jersey. Thanks for jumping in.
Hey, what's up?
On this end, all kinds of interesting things, but they're all technical related and kind of behind the scenes stuff. But I think that's what happens this time of year is internet stuff tends to pick this time of year, like after the holiday, before spring or summer or whatever's coming. And before the big seasons, which are usually the fall and winter. So people pick this time to do all their behind-the-scenes work. Speaking of that, we should be working on the Diversity Shoot website. You got all the dates yet?
No, but I say we go ahead with it, and if we get other dates, we do it because I've been giving it out. I just was on the phone with someone I told you about before we jumped in, and I'm like, yo, I didn't even send it to the website because we haven't updated it yet. And I'm like, yeah, no, we got to do that.
Yeah, let me know, because unless something's changed, we should be able to just jump right in and change all that. But anyway, that's what I've been doing is a bunch of website stuff behind the scenes, and it's just always, well, for me, it's fun to jump in and see what's the same, what's different, and how fast things can happen. Not everything's a win, but there's so many things that get better and faster all the time that I do this stuff every so often, and it's interesting to see the progression. I was going to say, I was just noticing, I don't remember when this is something like episode 1900 of the show. So we've been doing the show for a while. I've been doing producing the show for a long time, since 2016. So the show's changed, the themes and what do we call these? Like it's all the Daily Gun Show, but the actual shows that I do or whatever, like the topics, I guess, that kind of has changed over the years, and the thumbnails and things like that have changed. So I don't remember when I put that opening together of what we got now, but that's our original co-host Bob in the videos, and it's like some software, some phone app that you take a person's picture and stick it into all kinds of movies like that. I don't remember what the name of that was. It was popular for a minute or two on the internet. It's like a fad thing. But I was just going to say, I wonder if anybody knows any of those movies that were clipped or snipped or altered or whatever. I guess that was the beginning of AI, although I don't even know if it was AI as much as just some kind of machine crunching, just being able to take a face and turn it into some kind of a map and then apply that to a movie clip that they put in their list, because it wasn't like you could take any movie clip. You had to pick one from their list. So they had already, done whatever they need to do to apply person's pictures to it. But anyway, if anybody's out there who's watching any of those, you can remember any of them, extra points if you can ID any of the movies that we clipped for that, or that I chose for those clips. Anything new happening this week on your end of the internet?
Yeah, I mean, on the Gun Gear Review podcast, I finally did a review on the sites. I don't know if I told you about it last week, but we actually did the show Tuesday on Triclops sights, which I said on the show is a step between traditional notch and blade iron sights and red dots. So it's pretty good. It's high vis sights. You can check it out on Gun and Gear Review podcast, I think, on YouTube, and Firearms Insider on the, to check out our webpage and see the written review. Uh, Also, we had a diversity shoot Thursday night at We Shoot in Lakewood, New Jersey. We actually sold out a week ahead of time, which was crazy. And we had actually a journalist come down and hang out with us. He wanted to learn about what we did and who comes to the events and what's their motivation for coming to the event. And if they owned a firearm, what's their motivation? He'd already worked with John Petrolino, actually, the Penn Patriot, if you want to check out his work. And John also writes for Bearing Arms with Cam Edwards. And John was like, hey, this guy, he says he's interested. And, I co sign on him that he's a good guy. So have him at your shoot if you want. So I brought him in. Oh, yeah. Hey, Chris, thanks a lot for your donation last week, dude. I really appreciate it. And I can never get your area code right. I keep saying 704. I think that's Atlanta. But I gave you a shout out today during my live, and of course, I messed up the name of your freaking channel and podcast. So, I mean, not podcast, but your channel. Also, I filmed content while I was down at We Shoot because they have a media team. So I did 3 different topics. One was a video review of the sites I have, which was a layup because we had great lighting. We had great lighting and 2-camera shoot, so that should look awesome. And then the other ones I did was talking about alternatives to a staccato. So there were other 9mm double stack hammer fired competition pistols and what they are, because good Lord. And I used what the range had, not the range had, but their gun store had for sale. So I was able to pull some of their new guns and bring them out for people to look at on the video. And I gave a quick rundown of each firearm, but I did them in separate videos because 1, it creates content, and 2, I can use it as shorts, and so can the range. You know what I mean? Just real quick shorts. I think everything was shorter than a minute, and it's just a rundown on what I did and why I did it. I still think it's kind of fun, funny, interesting to watch another firearms fad take off, which is 2011s. And I know before somebody gets butt hurt over, oh, you call it a fad? Yes, it's a fad. It's going to go away. It's going to go away. It's going to settle down. The
And
entire industry.
it's come and gone.
Hmm?
Like, you call it a fad when it's a wave, when it's been here before and it's gone and it's come back again, maybe even more than once, but
Mm-hmm.
come and gone.
And so,
And maybe not
yeah,
9mm, but definitely double stacks for sure more than once, and maybe even 9mm if somebody was going to be a nerd about it.
9mm double stack is definitely. Oh, this is all new. The only thing new is this one comes in 3 parts instead of and just an upper. You know what I mean? A lower receiver and an upper. This is a lower receiver, upper receiver, and a plastic grip. Same, no different. But I'm like, yeah, but there are a lot of other guns too, like the Beretta 9211. The Beretta 9211 is another one that's a double stack, hammer fired, single action pistol. That the Pete Sig P226 X5, that's single action only, same, and the CZ uh, Sport 2, CZ Shadow Sports 2, or CZ Shadow Orange, or whatever. It's a TSL. That's another one, and they all have great triggers. Well, good triggers are great triggers. The 1911 has a better trigger because it has a better design. But those were, oh, and then also we had as the example of a 1911, even 2011, even though it's not a 2011, we had the Phoenix Trinity H Duty, which is a double stack, but it doesn't have a grip safety. And it comes already cut for a red dot. And I think it runs like $6,500 with the red dot. But man, is that thing smooth. When you're comparing them, you can actually feel the difference between the, almost $7,000 gun and the $1,700 to $2,000 guns. And for that amount of money, you should.
I'm going to go back to Woods' question since all about ask gun questions. Gun question: what was the first gun control in the U.S.? Was it native, or was it against the native population? Thinking pre-revolution. It was definitely
No.
pre-revolution.
hmm Well, the first I know of was 1620 in Virginia, and they banned the blacks from owning firearms.
I'm trying to find my screen share. I have it somewhere.
Now,
Oh, now it
there
works.
was another one. That's if you go with that. If you're talking North America, the Spanish had something going on out in California that was
Yeah,
different.
shit. Is that seriously how it's gonna show up on here? This is crappy. Is there any way I can
Ew.
mess with it? Right? Like you can't even see it. Here, I want this to be spotlight, and then I can't make it any bigger. Suck. So if I bring this over here and make it full screen, you won't even be able to see it. My thing says 1664, Virginia,
Okay.
and then South Carolina in 1712, and then you get to 1778 during the Revolution, and then they start making militia laws, except for slaves and Indians. And then, but Krabby Turtle had said, where'd it go? In 1779, Vermont passed a law that required militiamen and heads of households to have firearms. So I'd be curious to find out about that one. I don't know if I have. I don't look like I have that one. That would be in between here. And I don't have that in my list. So I can't. This is just my research when I was doing this Gun Control is Racist project. And I would call these U.S. gun control, but technically they're not, right? Because we're not the U.S. yet. But
Yep.
yeah, I don't know
hmm
if you want to draw the line. You could draw the line in England, I guess, sometimes too. So anyway, that's really shitty. I'll put a link in here because I guess this thing in vertical you can't really see very well.
Well, when I did my testimony about it, I made sure I said the colony of Virginia. And when I first wrote it up in a comment section, somebody's like, "We weren't even America then." I'm like, "I never said anything about us being America." But the state of Virginia and the government of the United States considers it all to be the same thing. Because in 2020 they celebrated, or 2019 they celebrated 400 years of continuing government, and saying, that's the longest continued government, in America is the Virginia House of Burgesses, which is the Virginia Assembly. and they celebrated that 400 years under Donald Trump, and he actually went to Virginia for that. So when the guy tried to argue it wasn't America, I'm like, well, President Trump and the entire state of Virginia don't agree with you. But hey, guy in the comment section, you do you.
Yeah, when you start looking at stuff with a microscope, right, there's very few straight lines or very, borders. So you
Hmm.
get the Constitution, but then you have the Bill of Rights. So right away you get some major discrepancies, and then you got your um, what's the other thing called Declaration of Independence, and then your
Hmm.
Constitution. That all didn't happen on the same day. That all didn't happen on like
Hmm.
a So right there, there's three spots you can start to say when's the beginning of the country, and then when you start thinking about when's the beginning of the country's laws, that's why it creeps to England and why it creeps to Roman shit sometimes, right? Because that's all the stuff that they had on their mind when they were putting it all together. So I can see why a lot of people will say you can't ignore what they were looking at, but I don't know how much weight you want to give it. That's too nerdy for me in an area that I'm not that interested in. But I know that those are layers to it, right? But in reality, we say 1776 pretty much, but doesn't matter. We're talking 1600s that there was the colonies, and again, most people call the colonies the United States, even though it was sort of the
Hmm.
kindergarten of.
So yeah,
Yeah, interesting
I'm
question.
just saying it's like you want to be pedantic in the comment section. I'm like, yeah, I'm not playing a game, dude. I just went by the line in the sand drawn by both federal and state government. If you want to go by something else, cool. But really, there's nothing here to win. I
Can you
mean,
post links in Instagram? You can, but they're not links. Right?
yeah, they're not highlighted. They're not clickable.
But at least I put it in there. But that's if you want to go check it out. That's a long answer to Woods's question, though. There's lots of laws that are essentially against either the natives or the slaves or
Hmm.
immigrants sometimes, and just kind of depends on what part of the country was writing the law and who they hated, right? Like,
Hmm.
so people in the South hated these people, and people in the West hated these people, and people in Southwest hated those people, and the people in the Northeast hated those other people, and they all made laws. And that's where I think it's interesting to bring this up every once in a while, um, because especially now that the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin Supreme Court decision requires, I forget the wording, you know it, history and something, or I haven't said it enough to remember the wording, but it has to, there has to be an analogy in history, right, to like any new law. And um, the antis, the only thing they got to stand on are the racist laws from the olden days. And in
Hmm.
reality, those racist laws were not just because they had nothing else better to do, but they knew that firearms were a crucial of all the rights. Well, they beat up people on all kinds of reasons or rights, like the right to assemble and other things, right to vote, right? But they knew that right to firearms was an important one to keep whole groups of people from uh, basically resisting the bullshit that was happening. Again, it depends on what part of the country you're talking about, but it was happening everywhere differently with different groups of people in different times. The one thing that was consistent is as soon as those laws disappear, everything starts to calm down a bit. Or am I wrong? I don't want to, assume too much. I'm not going to say that's probably too much to say, but I could say in general, once people have the right to defend themselves, they don't get abused as much. There's always
Well, like
exceptions.
Colonel Jeff Cooper, I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what he said, how he said it, but pretty much firearms gives you the ability to stop someone from imposing their will upon you without your consent. And that's what they were doing to anybody who they banned from firearms. It wasn't because it was to make them safer and to protect them, as in the person they said couldn't have a gun. It was never to protect the person you were stripping of that right and that ability. It was always whoever was making the law was protecting themselves from the things they were doing to the people they stripped of those rights. And nothing has changed about that till this day. They still do it for the same reason, but they tell you it's for your safety. It's for my safety that you make it more difficult for me to get a firearm to defend myself against criminals you allow out of prison, that you refuse to prosecute, or a government itself that just shits on your rights whenever it feels like it and goes, my bad. We didn't know
Well,
any better.
to be gracious, you could say that in the olden days there wasn't an understanding that there's a consequence for bad policy. But I think, that's being gracious because in reality, they either just didn't care or didn't bother to look, or profited, right? Exploited the situations that were created by bad policy. Um, there's all kinds of ways to get into that. There's whole chats about those kind of things. But anyway, I think that going forward, and as we start to see, um, well, there's a lot of division and non-clarity, but the internet gives us the ability to get together and have transparency. And as that happens, or when that happens, you start to see where bad policy creates this, and then it's not like this is inherently this way, or I always say poor people, right? Like trying to be inclusive of all whatever racist shit. They'll say like,
Hmm.
oh, poor people or whatever, and I'm like, bullshit. Like there's tons of poor people that are nice and happy and like live, like whole like populations of poor people all through time. Like being
Hmm.
poor doesn't make you violent or mean or nothing. Like there's all kinds of other things that can do it. And anyway, and the evidence of that is that there's asshole, evil, mean people that are rich, right? Like you can, there's other things going on here, and to just whatever, what's the word, like generalize it, I guess a nice way to say it, generalize it to say poor people are going to be violent and they shouldn't have guns because of that. Like anyway, is it dismissive? I don't know, but
Well,
anyway.
it's elitist as hell, and it's full of crap. Like somehow, you don't know anyone. Like I don't know anyone that's poor, or I've never been poor, or I don't. What I think everybody in
And
poor
they assume
neighborhoods just takes.
everybody else is the same way too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Not only is everybody the same way, but if you come into a poor neighborhood, everybody's just robbing each other. Like
You
nothing
got to
but ski
clutching your
masks. Yeah,
yeah,
everybody's walking down the street with a not even a ski mask, that old like bandit mask and and a skull cap.
bandana, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, bandana and a cowboy hat, or one of the cartoon black and white stripe, black and white stripe with a bandit
Just
mask on.
seriously. And anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is that might have played back in the day when there was nobody. The media was, even if they were trying to be good, like they just may not have been
Hmm.
able to see the where the consequences were, um, or maybe they had something pushing back on reporting about that. But anyway, you don't have those barriers anymore. Like, who cares if CBS is willing to report on the prison system? People who've been in prison come out or talk about it, and the people in
Hmm.
dealing with it, or whatever the issue may be. I just chose prison, but suicide, healthcare, nutrition. Like, there's so many freaking issues that have to do with what's going on in the world that I think what we're dealing with is we're in a time when that's becoming more transparent and unaware, and we're just, as a humanity, we're trying to figure out how to deal with that. Um, and you know what I mean? Like, there's just different ways of dealing with that. Communism's one way, like altruism is another way. Is that the right word? Like, just letting, depending on charity, to do it. Religion is one way. Like, I don't know, like trying to.
Well,
There's different ways, and we're just at the point where we're now seeing all the issues and all the interconnections, and we just haven't decided on the best ways to figure it out yet. There hasn't been enough success stories that people can get behind the success stories. We've had failures and successes, and people trying to cover their asses with the failures. I'm going to still try to be gracious. I don't think it's all exploiters trying to get rich, knowing that there's going to be
Hmm.
failures. But there's got to be some assholes that are out there knowing that when there's going to be failures and people are going to be okay with that they're going to get rich. But once we get, I think, like, to be optimistic, once we see some successes, and I'm going to use that marijuana thing as a success. Like, I don't know if that's a big
Hmm.
for the world or nothing, but it's an indication that enough people with a common interest push something that no one, I think, would have seen coming. No one would have seen that uh, come out of it. Kind of came out of nowhere, and maybe even constitutional carry. I think that's the same way. I think if you had asked a normal person on the street in 1994, in 2024, will there be constitutional carry in 29 states? And they would have said, "What are you talking about? We don't even have concealed carry in but 2 states. No way." And here we are in that world. So I think we don't look at our wins and we don't see that in the spectrum. But I'm probably not paying attention to what's going on with suicide because I only see the gun side of suicide. But every time I look into it, it's become a bigger thing that I can take care of or cover when I've cared to research it or try to do some a deep dive into it. I'm like, oh, this is too deep a dive. And I guess that's a good indication, right? Like, even the things that are our biggest issues are being addressed. They're just not solved yet. I kind of ramble in here, but
Well, see, to go back on what you're talking about with the ability to get information out using social media and alternative medias, um, I think that's a great thing. And we see now, especially with what's going on with the White House, with President Trump bringing in alternative media, regardless of how you feel about it, people that have podcasts and that are, which I hate this word, but it's very apt for a lot of these people, or influencers, are getting access to what only mainstream media had before. And that was why mainstream media, that was the thing that mainstream media feared the most, was losing access, that the story would have to go through others that weren't vetted. And to them, vetted means, on the same page as them, on the same educational level as them, went to the same schools as them, thereby pretty much having the same perspective as them. You can say there's right wing and left wing media or conservative and liberal media, but they all went to the same schools. They've all came up the same way. Uh, the system works. The system they understand was the same system. Well, now you have people with alternative means of media, and it's not the same. And you don't have one or two perspectives, you have a lot. But the sad part is, what you do when you have that many sources is you could just muddy up the water by doing exactly what they're doing, which is one side has one group of people that they pay to influence the, what do you call it, the narrative. The other side has someone else they pay to influence the narrative. And then you had third, fourth, and fifth parties pushing their own agenda. So now you're just overwhelmed. Before you had, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and now you have a bunch of Twitter accounts and TikTok and everything else, however else people get the news, because it damn sure isn't newspapers anymore. And everybody's, again, taking this into account. All communication is manipulation. So you're getting information from people that might have an alternative agenda that may not have to do with informing you. So uh, you have to be able to sift through that and see who's manipulating you and you're messing with you. And that just becomes a whole nother, what, paralysis by analysis. And then it's just easier to find people that agree with you, especially if that's what the algorithm spoon feeds you. So that is one of the dangers of what happened with all of these sources. So it's just one of the negatives, but there's
Mhm.
pros and cons in everything. I mean, there's pros and cons in just cooking your food all the way through.
I would say it's not like we knew going into it. It's what it was like. Also, an unforeseen consequence. Maybe that's the word, like a negative consequence. But I mean, maybe with 2020 hindsight, you could have said, "Oh yeah, look what happens. You start getting a bunch of people that only listen to the same thing, listening to the same thing. It's going to be an echo chamber." But we didn't know going into it that the machines were going to kind of do that to us or feed that to us that way. I don't think they did either. They probably would have put in some rate limiting or some sort of a mix. I think I figured it out. I shared just the window instead of the whole screen, and then I just made my window like a long rectangle, and it looks like I can almost get it to where you could read it. So in the future, if we ever need to do these, what do you think? Horizontal is better, or is vertical better? But I did that because
Horizontal. The
regular.
reason you did it makes sense. Yeah, well, the reason you did it makes sense, and if it works out in the long run, fine. People can pause this and read this if they want to. You know what I mean? Read what's on the screen. So, and it's all on there. So I say leave it like it is because for what the original, your original purpose of doing it remains the same. So why change
Well, now that I'm figuring it out,
it?
too, it's a little bit better on the eyes. But I can't change it mid thing anyway, for what it's worth.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
the next question.
Go ahead.
Oh,
No, that's fine. Cool.
Woods was saying, is 9mm made by the Nazis, or does it predate them? Who is to blame for 9mm? We all know that it was made by the pre-Nazis, so it's a Nazi caliber by default. But who's to blame? I'm thinking about who's to blame. I believe it's the weak people, the people that are lazy, the lazy and weak people because in order to be weak, you got to be lazy, right? Because you just decided not to go lift weights or do whatever you're going to do. So it's the people that can't handle a real caliber and that are scared to carry because they need a narrow caliber like 9mm so they can get more rounds in there. But what they're really saying is, I need a narrow caliber so I'm carrying less weight. So they need a less recoil and less weight. So I think it's the lazy and weaker people that are really to blame, because if they would just pull themselves up by the bootstraps, carry a decent caliber with a 4 or 3 in front of it, then we wouldn't have 9mm,
Okay.
no matter who invented it.
Okay. Understand
Am
one.
I
Pump
being
your
too
brakes.
harsh? Maybe.
Pump your brakes because you messed up a whole bunch of ways just now. You said with a 4 or a 3. Well, understand a 9 when you're talking about caliber, and that's the word you use. A 9 is a caliber that starts with a 3. So
Exactly.
yeah, just throw that whole one out. Just throw that part out. Just call it a real caliber that starts with a 4. Now, I'll go the other way because we're showing, what did President Putin call it? We're showing our American exceptionalism because we're just so much better than everybody else because we started out with cartridges in the 4, right? I mean,
Yeah,
when
pretty
when
much.
we started, we just started it out and it was like, all right, we're gonna make this thing effective now and pull out people stopping bullets and boom, 4. So we started off with a 45. But understand, Europeans do think they have a heavy hitting, heavy duty caliber because when they started doing it, they started off with 32 ACP and 380 ACP. Like, so a 9mm is humongous compared to a 32. So they think they are in big boy weights. See what I mean? It's like when you started lifting weights in the gym and you finally put your first
25.
45 wheel on each side. You went from putting on a 35 to putting on your first 45. Well, you feel like a power lifter compared to where you started. Meanwhile, America's over here in the corner with 3 plates, on each side, and that's their warm up.
In junior high. Yep.
Yeah.
All
Yo,
right.
dude, that sucked. That sucked as a young dude when I hit the gym because our football coach believed in actually in it. And people were like, yeah, you're supposed to lift weights. Yeah, but that wasn't a thing in the early 80s. Early 80s, they were still pushback about, you know what I mean, lifting heavy weights because it's going to slow you down and make you muscle bound was still, uh,
Or hurt your bones even. Like they weren't sure when you were done growing and what years you should
yeah.
start lifting weights and what. Or like you could lift weights, but like you say, like heavy weights, like they
hmm
would just get in there and learn how to
the,
lift
be-
weights essentially.
the belief was that it'll seal off your ends of your bones when your bones harden and it would cause you to not fully develop. So that was still nutrition exercises version of FUD lore. And our coach believed in pushing heavy weights, but then you get in there and you see the seniors benching like 405, and coach is making you use the bar because you haven't figured out how to balance a bar yet. I want to lift like them. Calm down, Sparky. You're gonna kill yourself.
All right. So then the next question is from, I don't know how to say it. So somebody fan. You guys interested in the 632 UC titanium? Are you familiar with that one?
Mm-mm.
Looks like it's a Smith and Wesson. What would UC be, I wonder? And then the titanium, I'm assuming means it's a titanium gun. I have had Smith and Wesson titaniums. I like them. They're very lightweight, and I can't tell. I don't know from listening to it if a 632 is a 357
No,
or
I
a.
don't want this thing. No, I don't want this thing. It's in 32 H&R.
Oh, it's in 32 H&R. So that makes it a 6-shot, and that explains why there's 6 bullets in this picture. This is back in the day, before 38 or when 380 was still trying to compete with 9mm for small pistols, and 32 H&R came along. So I think they probably put some time and effort into production of these things, maybe in the early 2000s, and they're probably dusting that off again.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Mm.
my whole thing about this, okay, I get it now. I saw it was in 32, so I'll calm down because I'm like, in 38, a 13-ounce 38, probably going to hurt a little bit, but 13-ounce 32 is not. And they only have, okay, 32 H&R Magnum, which is still a step down from 327 Magnum, which is his big brother.
Oh,
Um,
so I'm thinking. Well, I'm thinking 32 H&R Magnum. That's what you said, right?
yeah, and that's not, yeah, you're thinking 32 H&R Magnum, and I'm thinking 327 Magnum, which is another step up from 32 H&R.
Okay.
So there's
I'm only
32. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I don't know these calibers as good as you do.
Yeah, there's 32, and then there's 32 H&R Magnum, and then there's 327 Magnum. That's the way they go. Like 38 Special, and 357 Magnum. Same thing.
So I
Most
like
people
the
don't know there was a
concept
38.
because it's taking
Uh-huh.
a 38 down a little bit. It's the same as making a 40 from a 45 or something. It's like just narrowing it down so you can get more capacity in there. So
Uh-huh.
45, they didn't really go to 45. They went from 45 to 9 with the year talking about the new double stack 1911s. So it's like
Uh-huh.
you take away a little bit of power, but you get a lot more bullets. So same kind of thing. You remove a little bit of power from each shot, but you get 6 rounds in the cylinder. In a revolver, it's a real pain to reload. So more rounds in the cylinder is, sort of a big gain. I guess I have it on a lame
Wait a
picture.
minute. Did they change these up? Hold on a second. Okay, I think so. Because I must have been looking at what you had on the screen because they had gutter sights. No, this looks like something pretty cool. I take back anything negative I said because it actually has real sights on it instead of just a gutter sight and a hump front sight. So it's got good sights on it.
Yeah, it looks
If
like
it's a
they claim
smooth
to be
trigger pull.
fiber optic or something.
Yeah, it looks like no, who is the front sight by?
I just saw one that had a big green dot on it.
Yeah, it's XS sights. So it's got the XS front sight with the
Smith triggers
uh,
rotate. It's double action only, so it's not going to be like some kind of buttery smooth trigger, but it's going to have a stage, and it won't be anywhere near as bad as shooting a 357.
hmm. So
Anyway,
I
I love
think that's
revolvers. I
effective for
think
what it
they're a
is.
great idea. The lightweight ones are amazing. I really like them. They're even better in a caliber that isn't abusive, I guess. And this
Hmm.
is 32 or 327, or I guess it's a 32 H&R Magnum.
Yep.
Everybody that gives me shit about, I go 9mm a week, anemic caliber, that's lame. They'll go, you don't want to stand in front of it. So go stand in front of one of these. Like, nobody's going to do that.
Hmm.
So, and there's 6 rounds of it in a thing that can't be messed up by a slide. Like, there's only very few things that are going to stop a revolver from doing its job. So I'm okay with it. So, what was the question actually? You guys interested in it? Nah. but I'm okay if other people are interested in it. I'm a fan of the concept. Should Ruger
Hmm.
make it in a polymer version? Yes, I'll add that.
See, for
All right.
me, I'd be interested in something like this for my diversity shoots, to introduce other people to small town. Everyone who comes into the gun world may have their own prejudices and biases, and also fears. So some people, as a brand new firearms owner, again, who doesn't have a history of looking at guns or even thinking about guns, somehow feel safer with what they feel is an older design of a revolver. And they don't want a semi-automatic pistol without a safety because they think safeties are important on semi-autos, like a physical safety that you can click on or off, that you can activate yourself separately from the trigger. But they're not ready for a semi-automatic pistol because even they don't trust that, so they want to carry with an empty chamber and all kinds of other fear that new gun owners have. All right, I could either dance that dance or go, hey, want a revolver? And somehow in their mind, that's safer because, well, it has a long double action trigger pull, so it won't go off by itself and it's safer. And you can have one in a chamber. You can have all the chambers loaded. So anything that makes it easier for those people to get into this world, but understand when I bring them in, I want them to shoot their guns and I need them to go to class. I don't just go, hey, buy this, stick it in your sock drawer, and you're good to go because you feel safe now. All right. I'm like, all right, you chose a revolver, you chose a double action revolver. Well, you have a little gun that's harder to shoot accurately. You really need to get better at this. And then that gets them in the range more and more. And sooner or later, they'll be comfortable with that gun with no safety on it. And they'll meet other gun people. And now, next thing you know, hey, I'd like to try a small semi automatic because it gives me more to hold on to. And it's flatter than this revolver, and you never know along wherever they're going. But my thing is to get them whatever they're comfortable with to get them in the door, get them in the door, and then they can educate themselves and the people around them can educate them because they become more confident in this environment. When people start gatekeeping and talk about how obsolete revolvers are, or well, why would you get anything smaller than a 9 millimeter? And it's like, because I'm bringing people into this. People need their first step. Some people aren't ready to jump directly into this, and everyone's not an 18-year-old male or teenage guy when he picks up his first gun. This could be, in many of the cases that I've dealt with, a woman past retirement age picking up her first firearm. What, she should get a Glock 19 too and know how to run it? Well, no. Many people aren't ready for that step, even if they're all for gun ownership. And yes, I want to own one. All right,
Here's an
cool.
equivalent, and a lot of people are scared to admit this, or they won't even bring it up. But when you tell a lady that she can't run a revolver, that's like telling her she can't run the stick shift.
Hmm.
So you're just dismissing her ability to perform excellently with a revolver. Um, there's a bunch of them in here, so I don't know what order to do them in. Am I saying this like Scubs fan? Is that the way I'm supposed to say that? The titanium has a titanium cylinder. That's the titanium part, and new grips. Uh, the
The hell's
UC
a
has
new
two
grip?
grips. Well, I'm guessing it's this ply material. I don't know if it. I would like to think it's like a plywood made out of foam, but I don't think it's a foam grip. It's probably like laminate. Uh,
Mhm.
so I don't know if it's. I prefer to have like that's why I was gonna say Ruger should make this because Ruger likes to put a big rubber comfortable like grip that
Mhm.
has squishy areas on it, and maybe you don't need that with a 32. I guess really, but my preference is not really finger grooves. As much as I like finger grooves on a revolver or on any gun, I would say probably just a big swell, but a big rubber swell for me on a revolver would be ideal. There's even that one goofy one. I forget what it's called. I never shot one, but it looks like it'd be
What's that?
interesting. It's like a big rubber ball. It's almost like a tennis ball on a revolver instead of a grip. Have you
Yeah,
seen that?
yeah, I saw that one. We actually talked about it on the show, and I'm like, yeah, it's all great when it's in your hand. How do you carry it?
No, yeah, exactly. It's a big fat thing, so I don't think that's why it got much coverage. Um, but yeah, I don't know what a
Well,
normal. I
that's
think regular Smith grip is just rubber, so maybe it's the polymer or polymer. I keep saying polymer, but ply
textured synthetic boot grip is what they call it.
textured synthetic. As long as it's got a
Textured
texture, I'm
synthetic.
down. I don't need it to be real wide on a gun this big. On a small, little, tiny 22, yeah, but not on this one. This one, I want it more for carry. I want it to be kind of slim. So that's what I was going to get at. I'm okay with this kind of grip, the old fashioned. I don't know what to
Hmm.
call it, a slim grip. I'm okay with that on a
Yeah,
little revolver. Well, on up to a 357, I suppose. Like
I
I
need
can,
more than that.
I prefer more.
If you go,
I can handle it
hmm
at least for carry.
yeah,
Like I
if you look at Diamondback, the self defense revolver, Diamondback SDR, and they have a small J frame type pistol, and I could not hit target. Well, again, at 25 yards with a reduced size target, I shot it with a 9 mil in it, and again with a 2 inch barrel, and I freaking sucked. But when I shot the 3 inch barrel with the bigger grip, I was able to hit 6 out of 6 on a steel target at 25, a reduced size target, which I think might have been a zone size target. I was able to ping it every time at 25 yards. But with the little J frame, with the little freaking tiny grip that only has two fingers on it, I hit two to the left, two to the right, and two in the middle. So, yeah, those are the short ones. And I think they weigh 22 ounces. And that's significantly more than the 13 ounces that the Smith weighs. But it's a six shot. It's six shot, and it's in 38. Excuse me, 357 38. So when it comes to something like that, hey, the weight difference between 13 ounces and 22 ounces. Uh, is it really that much when you put it in a good holster on a good belt? No, but I think the
not to
difference
a
is when
human,
you.
not to a human.
Yeah,
When you're holding it in your
but
hand, it seems like a lot, but when you, like you say, you're strapping it to yourself, come on,
mhm.
we drink that
Now the
much.
difference. No, but the difference to me would be when you're shooting it, how punishing is it? When you're shooting it, how often do you work on it? Like, will that 32 ACP, even though it's the same size and a lighter weight, will it work for me? Because who knows? That's why I say pull triggers on a lot of guns, and you may be surprised. You shoot the gun, and all of a sudden you can hit like nobody's business, like a freaking building on fire. Imagine that. Oh, well, it doesn't make sense on paper, but yeah, when I pick it up, it rocks. All right, cool. Check it out. Or, Ferg, I know I was right the whole time. All right, cool. But at least you'll know. And you can tell somebody else what your experiences were if they ask you how did it fit in your hand? Well, this is what it felt like. But what I liked was the Smith& Wesson Bodyguard 2.0. I've not seen such a small gun feel like such a full-size gun. It was insane. Oh, speaking of guns, one of the guys, one of my volunteers, Nick, actually won a Ross Martin uh, pistol at SHOT Show, and he actually had it at Thursday's event. So I got to shoot
Was
the
it like in
newest
some
Ross
kind of
Martin.
just raffle or like some feat of skill, or how do you win it?
Ross Martin had a drawing, and he entered it. And I mean, Ross Martin being a small company, being in the basement of SHOT Show, basement shoved in the corner in a small booth. Not that many people signed up. I mean, that's how I won the Lone Star, excuse me, Lone Wolf Arms Dusk 19S X, excuse me. I won that because barely 120 people in it. So again, if you go to a trade show like SHOT Show or something else, create a friggin' email account just for that crap, and Enter as many contests as you possibly can using that email address. You might win, especially at the smaller places. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go over to Staccato and try to win, well, everybody at SHOT Show is going to be at Staccato.
And there's some contests where they're just like they got somebody standing in a aisle saying, "Hey, can I scan your badge? Hey, can I scan your badge? Hey, can I scan your badge?" And then they get a bunch of
Yeah,
entries just that way.
though. Yeah, but that's a bunch of entries.
So Mike is
And I
asking,
mean, go ahead.
where does the 32 ACP fit into the realm of 32s? So the 32s are historic, I think, more than anything. And back when we were smaller people, I still contend that we were smaller humans back in the day. So we were smaller. And so that means we didn't want to carry around so much stuff. And we didn't need so much stopping power, with my quotes up, to deal with anything. And we weren't like, anyway, you could just brandish a lot of times. I get the idea from watching the old movies. You just brandished a lot of times. So it didn't matter what you were packing. So anyway, the 32s I think are more historic from the revolver days of the olden days. So 32 ACP is probably from Europe because
No, bro.
trying to think of what
No,
type.
32 ACP. 32 ACP was picked up in Europe and used a lot in Europe, but no, that was John Moses Browning's first cartridge that he developed.
Well, I know it was
So he developed,
the first for the 1911. I knew it was Browning's, but I didn't know what it was for.
yeah.
It was for
So it
his
was his
first
first
line.
one. Yep.
Okay.
So that was his breakout hit, and that
Okay.
went to Europe. A lot of European countries dug that, and that's where it was like a police gun over there. Here, uh, pocket hammerless. I think. Yep. Damn. There it goes. I just looked at the pulled up the Wikipedia article, but yeah,
Yep.
his 1903 pocket hammerless was that big one, and then it was in the Ruby pistol, which is all over Spain, France. Yep.
Okay. So
And then of course the Walter PPK. Yeah. So
so
yeah,
that's
it has a European tinge to it.
well, only because they, like you say, they picked it up. We didn't pick it up right away, and they did, and he
Mm-mm.
needed to sell it, so they bought it. Or he didn't need to, but they
Yep.
did buy it, and he sold it to him. But so
Hmm.
that's where I don't know where he came up with the 32. Then that would be a question to a historian. But I think it's from the calibers that were already out there. So in other words, if he was going to be making a new gun in a semi-auto, are you going to start with a barrel that's some caliber that's new, or are you going to start with a barrel blank that you already got? So if he's taking an existing revolver and chopping it up so he has a barrel blank, that makes sense that where he would start with a 32. But I'm just guessing. But or
Yeah.
maybe
I
he
wonder.
had tools to ream 32 barrels. So you know what I mean. Like why not just start with that? But I think it's in the realm of calibers. 32 sounds like where Browning started with semi-automatics, which means where the United States started, because there might have been some European doing it in 9mm or something else. But
Hmm.
that's where he started, and it's obvious that he quickly went to 45 and 38.
Hmm.
So it was not large enough to do anything that he wanted. And when he started to look at it again, he said, I can make it smaller into 25. And 25 still exists. 38
Hmm.
still exists. 30 or
Hmm.
45 still exists for sure. His rifle calibers are different, but I think that's where it fits in there. And then as far as into the realm of the other 32s, I think because we had 32 revolvers, which aren't ACPs, but the 32 short and the 32 longs from olden days, that's where they were like, hey, we have the tooling to make these bullets. Why not make these 32s instead of making them 32 shorts and longs? Let's make them into 32 H&R Magnums. And now we can make it almost a 38. It's kind of like a 38 except in 32 diameter, right? And 32 H&R Magnum, or wait, what was the one you said? 327 is sort of like the
Hmm.
357 32s. So it was like, hey, we can make these revolvers a little bit small, well, the same size, but we can put a little bit more bullets in them. And so that's where they developed to. But I don't think we would even be talking about 32s if those 32 H&Rs didn't happen in the early 2000s.
Hmm. Oh, this is just hilarious because I fell down the rabbit hole. Yeah. So the 32 came from us again, America. 32 Smith and Wesson. also known as the 32 Smith& Wesson Short 1878 for pocket revolvers. So then you go from that, and then it just grows up, right? 32 Short, 32 Smith& Wesson Long, 32 H&R Magnum, and 327 Magnum. So that's the growth of that. But also, when you went semi-automatic, why did he came up with 32 ACP? Because the 32 long, 32 Smith& Wesson, the 32 long were already popular. So people knew that power and people knew that size. So you can make a small gun in something they're still familiar with. I mean, why did they call it, why do they call it the 357 SIG? Well, people already knew 357 Magnum. So calling it 357 SIG ties it to 357 Magnum. I think so. It's the same reason. And then, of course, the Europeans took that because it was early 1900s. He had a dependable pistol when everybody else was still trying to figure it out. He knocked it out with a thin pistol that was ergonomically done, that had the magazine release where it was comfortable. I think it had a Hill magazine release, but still, John Moses Browning was the first dude Putin knows out, and then he dropped it not only in Colt in the U.S., but he dropped it with FN in Europe. And it said, according to this thing, FN made 500,000 of damn pistols chambered in 32 ACP.
I don't know what it was like in Europe in the 1900s, in the early
Mm-hmm.
1900s, but I've seen a lot of movies and things, so I can piece it together. And I assume that they needed these semi-automatic pistols because of all the wizards and dragons and people on
Mm-hmm.
horseback with full armor pillaging their
Yeah,
villages, whatever.
when you shoot a slithering in the face, you don't need that much of a caliber because from what I saw, from the documentary I saw, they're all kids, so it doesn't need to be that much. But see, United States developed along a different path. Unlike fighting kids with magic sticks, United States actually had to fight Filipinos, and they weren't playing. And we had to go back to the drawing board and was like, hey, those 38s you decided to issue the military and devil action Colts? Yeah, we're going to need those old school single actions back at 45 because they ain't stopping with this. Yeah, pretty much. Matter of fact, just make every pistol we have for the next 80 years in 45 caliber. Yeah, let's just run with that. And that's why we developed along a totally different path.
So Mike
Because
says, following up with
Mhm.
power wise, whereas 32 ACPs and the 32, so they're all the same diameter, but 32 ACP would be probably the shortest of all of them because it's smallest. So the 32 short is pretty small. I'm just thinking of
according to this,
go ahead.
they're around 32 short, runs about 93 to 108 foot pounds of energy. So it's not going to be that huge of a step for 32 ACP. 32 ACP runs, actually, yeah, never mind, 161 foot pounds of pressure to almost 220 foot pounds. So, yeah, I think it's at the top of the pile. Wait a minute, what calibers are we talking? Yep,
What
we're
about
just talking about
32 long
32.
though? Where's
All
32
right, hold
long?
on.
Well,
Gotta
32
jump
short
down.
is also old black powder, and so that means it's old fashioned.
Woo, come here. Yeah, yeah, we're talking to 18
And they did make 32 H&R in order to make them modern because they were
and
old
then
before.
H&R Magnum. Yeah, so my whole thing is it's a whole thing. I was actually talking to my mom's friend, and her dad left her 38 long. He had a 38 long revolver, which stayed popular more than people think, longer than people thought. And she was looking for ammo for that, and I'm like, I hit her with the Indiana Jones. It belongs in a museum. I'm like, don't hold on to it so tight, honey. I understand it's your dad's gun, but come on now.
Yeah, just like if you owned your great great grandpa's or great great grandma's car, you wouldn't be driving it every day. You would own it and put it in a
Hmm.
garage or something.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing?
Okay, so going with muzzle energy or whatever is what you just went with. That's probably a
Hmm.
good comparison. Um, the long, it goes from 99 to 112. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's anemic compared to the ACP. So I was wrong. I'm going off of its size, not by its power. So new powder, doesn't matter how big the space is. It's hold on, what's the size of the projectiles? It's throwing out a smaller projectile, but it's throwing it out with a lot more energy. The other ones are throwing out 20 grains more, so quite a bit more. A gram, yeah, one more gram
Now,
in an old one.
now 32, excuse me, 32 H&R Magnum steps it up to 170 foot-pounds pressure to 320 foot-pounds. So now
So it smokes
you
the 38.
yeah, yeah, 32 ACP. But again, you're talking you went from 1903, 1905 to 1984. So that's a whole, couple of generations of handgun.
Oh snap! Agrizer saying he's got 32 short. That's lemon squeezed. So that must be that way you season the squirrel or whatever as you're
Yeah, yeah,
shooting.
yeah. Well, you shoot seafood and stuff like shrimp with it. That way you can
Shoot a fish.
you shoot fish with it and lobster and stuff. I don't know how you break the shell with it, but you got lemon squeezer. Break yourself, fool.
Let's see.
Hold
I
on,
think
let me see.
everybody's
I got,
having autocomplete issues today, but the typing is an early Ivor Johnson top break. I
holy
don't think
crap, bro!
people.
Holy crap! Yo, dude, I just looked at 327 Magnum. Bro, that starts at 435 foot-pounds and ends up with the hottest at 620.
Yeah, see, that
That
brings it up
smokes.
to, yeah.
That brings it up to 40 Smith and Wesson, and starts to freaking tickle the balls of some some 10 millimeter.
And that's coming out of a 32.
Now that it comes out of a 327 Magnum, but that 327 Federal Magnum can chamber everything in the 32 family,
And
so it
then
can jump.
what is the grains of that? How many grains are coming out of
So
that?
so it can start. It starts at 100 grains, which is heavy for a 32, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it
Because
goes up to 115.
a 32 ACP, to put it in comparison, is 60 or 75. So it's like twice as big of a piece of lead
Yeah.
flying at twice the speed at least to four
Oh,
times.
that thing is hilarious. Yeah, we're talking 1,400 feet per second with
That's the difference
435
between
foot pounds.
um, that was Browning's first automatic cartridge in 1899, and when was H&R, or no, when was 327 made? Like what
327.
year?
When was that? I mean, it was short. 2007.
Yeah, okay,
So it's 100 years different. It's 100 years different, bro.
pretty neat.
I just think that's pretty freaking cool. Um, and you can still get in the snub nose revolver. Now, the number of guns it was available in is obviously, dropped from where they first started out because you had Charter Arms, Taurus, Freedom Arms. Uh, I remember. Yep, there you go. The Ruger GP 100 gave you a 7-shot GP 100. Oh snap! Hey, 20. Hey, they have it in the LCR.
What,
Ruger has it in the
327?
LCR. Yeah, 327 Magnum
The next question is how many shots? 6 shot?
7. I think it's 7. Let me check. Let
Crap.
me see. Nah, 6. Mother father. Nope, it's 7-shot in the Ruger GP 100, but it's only 6-shot in the double action only LCR. They also have it in the LCX.
Mine's 5, so having
Mm.
an extra shot at those numbers, I could see it. I'm not going to go buy another one, but if something happens, then I might consider it over
Well,
357. The thing is, I
my
have a
whole
lot of 357. Like, I'm not going to
yeah.
go buy anything new caliber anymore.
But my thing with 7 shots in the GP 100, I'm like, oh, well, now,
It's all
you
different,
know what I mean?
especially if you're
Yeah, I
working
mean,
or something. Like, yeah, that's a big deal. Well, I don't know. It's if you're starting for sure, and if you got money to throw around, then it's definitely a contender. Like I say, I'm not going to throw everything away for 2 rounds, but
no.
if I was starting somebody up, or if I was starting over, if I was starting from scratch, I could totally understand it. The days of like,
Mhm.
here's a question. Well, first, Patriot's saying his ears are burning because he likes 32. Yeah, I was dismissing it at first, but uh, because it's oldness, but it's still kicking. And I like the guns. I like the look.
Man, good,
Uh,
good, boo. So I'm looking at this, right? Because obviously I easily fall down rabbit holes. And they got it in 6 inch. Is it
you
six
talking about
six
the
inch?
LCR?
The Ruger
Oh, gee.
GP 100.
Mhm.
Because they were talking about, because with that speed, now understand again, over 400 foot-pounds, uh, it's a hunting gun for some things. They were talking about javelina and whatnot, because you're approaching, you're doing well over 9 millimeter power, and I think into high 40 power, and coming close to 357 Magnum out of, yeah, it's coming close to 357 Magnum out of a 4 inch.
Hmm. I feel like we made Woods buy a 327 Magnum. That always feels good.
Oh
It's
heck
not
yeah, peer
cool.
pressure, peer pressure.
Yep. He was
I,
exercise that muscle.
dude, I love it because I showed up at We Shoot, and We Shoot is where I first found out about the Rock Island Armory DY9 Glock clone, and that particular one came off the floor at, I forgot whether they were doing it at 225 or 199, but because they got that, they were selling it at the lower price, and I I pestered the camera guy into actually buying it because he lives in Pennsylvania. So he could actually buy the thing in Jersey and have it transferred to PA and pick it up. He didn't need to, get special permission from the New Jersey government in the form of a pistol purchase permit. So he bought the thing, and we took it out on the floor and actually shot it at the diversity shoot. So I thought that was pretty cool. I love the question you have on screen.
Before I get that one, there's somebody on the Instagram side that sent me a link to their Smith from when we were talking about it back a while ago. And I've been waiting
Hmm.
because they got a private account and I had to like apply to be a member or whatever to view their account. And then they must have left because just saying it now in case they're just listening that I can't see that picture you sent because I'm not okay to watch. You have to accept me as a subscriber to your account before I can see it, I guess. But we did have an attempt by somebody over on Instagram to share a picture, which is cool. It's the first time somebody, no, it's not the first. It's the first time in a while that somebody's done something from Instagram. There's a lot of people over there watching, but their tendency is to not interact. So definitely encouraged and welcomed. Sorry, you're talking about the. Oh, it sounded like rain. You're talking about the thing on the screen from Ronald. Our FN scars worth it right now. Why did something happen? Something come up?
I don't know what happened. Did something happen with stars? I mean, I personally look at, why are you getting one? Um, if you want to spend the money on a 308 battle rifle, go ahead. There are other 308 battle rifles, but they're all expensive. SCAR is at least standardized because it was adopted by the U.S. military, so it works. From what I hear about others, it's sometimes questionable whether 308 battle rifles work that are AR adjacent. You know what I mean? Like that are like AR-15s and take
Mhm.
AR-15 mags. But if you want a battle rifle in 308, pick it up. I mean, but it's very expensive. I You'd have to give me one. Like I wouldn't go, I actually 100% need a scar and I'm going to buy one because I can't think of a reason to spend that much money on that. But if I had the money and I wanted one, it would make sense to buy it because it's a dependable 308 rifle that you know is going to go bang every time. No one's ever said they weren't dependable. But when you're trying to find something that's in 308 otherwise, it's sometimes questionable whether they work or not. You know what I mean? Like AR-15 type rifles. But would I buy a freaking FAL from DS Arms? Yeah. Would I buy? I probably wouldn't buy a Springfield Armory M14 clone or M1A, but I'd probably buy one from Fulton Armory or James River. Um, so of the battle rifles, Scar is the most modern one. Able to have pick rails and everything else and accessories. They're just going to be very expensive. I don't think there's ever going to be a cheap time to get into Scars. So if you have the money and you're looking at it, I say do it now before there's like a mass shooting or some push on anti-gun bills and everybody's scrambling to get something before they pass a law against it. Yeah, go for it.
Trying to look for the comment. I unclicked it. But did somebody yell at us, guys? I can't find it anymore. But it was asking about the scar, and there it is. No, it was black one. So there, it's up on the screen again. I think I'm going to say that I don't disagree with you at all. Like the 308 platforms have been like notoriously annoying because there's there's no commonality. There's no like uniformity or whatever, like there is with the 5.56
Mm-hmm.
AR platform, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
1022 platform, and I could go on and on. So because of that, and we all lived through. Let's just start with the assault weapons ban. Everything kind of went into, slow motion or whatever. There wasn't a lot of development because there wasn't a lot of demand. Blah blah blah. So as soon as it ended in 04, boom, we start to see massive sales, and now people are running all over the place, and they can't import a lot. There's not a lot of stuff they can import, and there's not a lot of stuff to be imported anyway. And so I think there was some development, or we know that there was some development. And I guess what I'm saying is like we all like experienced that beginning of the development. And so let's say I forget what they are even anymore, but there were like the two kind of platforms for the 308s, and there were more than that. But like Colt made a 308, so maybe what with their form factor, was there a couple of magazines or something? Like there was a couple of different DPMS maybe and something, and I can't even remember because I never had the money to buy one. But you basically had to make a decision: which side am I going to go down, because they're not the same. Remember
Yeah,
commercial,
are you gonna
military,
go SR
sabers?
25 magazines? It's SR 25 magazines, or are you gonna go with SR 25 was one of them, and the other magazine, and excuse me, not magazine, but the lower. It was two different lowers.
Yeah, right. And even when you did go with one, you would go with a proprietary upper, and now your parts aren't necessarily your barrels are never gonna match unless you buy. Even sometimes in the same company, they didn't bother making their stuff match between different. So anyway, so you got into a lot of diversity, or I guess that's the right word, like a lot of different paths you could go down as soon as you got into 308, and that was back then. So what I guess my issue was not the fact that they're all different. And then you had things like DSA. I don't know if you mentioned that one, and like other things
Yep.
were different platforms completely. And then the problem is that nobody was using those overseas, aside from just a couple of them that were issued. So there was no time on the clock with any of them, with any real hard experience. And then the problem is then that once you get to like 10 or 11, 2010 or 11, good luck. Like there are so many paths at that point. I mean, I didn't keep up with them until then, but I kind of knew there was a few paths. But then I was like, holy moly. And then you get to YouTube, And literally anybody with a mill, anybody with some branding experience, anybody with a little bit of money to invest, and then put the right elements in place, the right person selling it, the right amount of feedback, and the right amount of customers, and the right type of customers. If you sell something to a military operator and it breaks and people die, let's just leave it at that. Like, that's one scenario. And then you could have a customer who buys stuff because it looks cool and so used it, or maybe it looks like a movie thing. And then next week they're buying the next one because it looks cool and another movie used it. And next week they're buying another one because they're so cheap that they can buy as many as they want. And how often are those guns ever going to get used to the point where they break? Like, very few people are buying that kind of gun to make their one and only gun. So I think, you've got your, and everything in between. Then you got your sports people who are like, I need it to be durable and lightweight. And then you got your long range marksman people who are like, I need it to be completely accurate. It has to be ultimately accurate. And then you got people who go into the store and go, I want the accurate trigger and I want the dependable stock and I want this and that. And what did they make? A jalopy. Like, they're going to say that they made the best of all worlds, but in reality, it's none of any of those worlds, right? So that's the problem with, and I'm not even describing ARs, that's the problem with the 308s starting at the beginning. So that's my problem with them, is that they're all just a giant question mark, really, until you get to
That's
some of the
why.
even then, like, come on, nothing is, unless
Which
it's one of those issued, I don't even know what was issued, but unless it's one of those issued rifles, and then I'd say, are the issued rifles any good? Like, usually people bitch about their issued stuff. So anyway,
to
the
me,
SCAR was issued, right?
uh,
So for a minute,
yeah. If I go with any 308, uh, it would start with, if I had the money. If money was not a thing, I'd go with the SCAR first. SCAR was issued. The SCAR has a standard. The SCAR has one manufacturer that started making them and is still making them. The SCAR has what, 20, 30 years now in the system. It has
has it been that long?
accessories. Yeah, it has the accessories. It has things going. I think so. 20 years.
No, you're not wrong.
It has accessories.
That's horrible. I'm that old.
Yeah.
Yeah, think about it.
Yeah, so it has that. It has the upgrade with the sniper version of the SCAR if you want that. So what is it, SCAR 20? So it's there, man. Go with the SCAR. I think that's the best bet when it comes to main battle rifles because again, DS Arms is the one that's making FALs. They should work because it's a new manufacturer. They're not putting together kits.
And they've been
So
doing it
that should
forever,
work.
and they still in business, and there's so few people doing that I think, you know what I mean, they would have come and gone if they were bad.
But when it comes to exactly what you were talking about before, who's running a DS Arms FAL hard? If you're going to run it hard, what is the durability on one? And I'm just asking the question. I'm not throwing shade. But when we talk about people that
It's
do
hard to be
reviews,
taking it to a lot of classes and actually leaning into it and not just
mhm,
giving it a free ride all the time. Yeah.
yeah. So now I've seen one dude talk about a 6,000 round. Uh, his 6,000 rounds shooting Springfield Armory M1A Scout, but he's the only dude and he goes into everything that broke and yada yada. But I'm like, well, what breaks on a SCAR? We'd know about it. It'd be easily found because you'll find it on military websites or people that in the military and shot the guy because they got miles on them. They shot him a lot. They got deployed with them. They beat the shit out of them. So you would know. And I really, again, this is off the top of my head without diving down a rabbit hole. I'm not hearing about a lot of things on the SCAR itself that breaks outside of it being hard on optics, being hard on magnified optics because of its recoil impulse.
I don't pay attention, but I also don't hear anybody constantly complaining about the scars breaking either. Like, but they're
Yeah.
also
Uh,
$1,000 plus guns. Nobody's really beating on them too much, unless
yeah,
they're
but the people, well, I hear stuff about M1As and still people are talking about how that because there are more people that have them. So they shoot them and they may shoot them more because they don't cost as much. This is just me throwing stuff out there because I like being a contrarian. But I don't hear a lot about people beating those up. excuse me, I hear a lot about people breaking their Springfield M1As, and the fact that, oh, the Springfield A1A isn't the best, M14 clone. You should buy one from Fulton Armory or James River because they do a better job. And then I look at those, and they're significantly more expensive, but supposedly they're better made.
Well, I got to agree, but there's always a but. I feel that a lot of people that buy those particular model of rifles are Marines and they break everything. So
Can't argue with that.
that's got to be taken into effect.
But we fuck everything up. I'm sorry, but we do. If we can't break it, we'll get it pregnant.
You're probably fiddling with it all the time, and that's what happens. Something like. Patriot says, "What about speaking of Marines?" Patriot says, "What about the 320 or the 32 Federal Magnum? That's even better." So we've been saying the 32 H&R, and you're saying the 327, but I forgot about the
Yeah.
32 Federal Magnum.
Well, the 327 Federal Mag. That's what we're talking about, right? What did you say?
Oh, okay. There's not a 32 Federal Magnum also?
The 327 Federal Magnum. Yeah, you left the
Okay,
number
okay.
off.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry, I'm distracted. We've got, according to my cool weather thingy, it's going up to 13 mile an hour gusts of wind here. So it keeps sounding like somebody's knocking on the door, pounding on my window, and I'm not used to, the leaves or the branches or whatever they are smashing on the windows. Woods had asked about the 327 Magnum carbines, and you'd said, yeah, there's some lever actions.
Yep. I know Henry makes one.
Okay.
Off the top of my head. I mean, because I often look at.
But I could handle one, especially if they sent it to me. They could send it to the podcast and me and Tony each one.
Well, my whole thing about when people want to send me guns, I'm like, yeah, okay. Not on top of that, I need ammo. So to go, hey, here's a gun for the diversity shoot in 327 Magnum. Hi, yeah, I need an ammo supplier for 327 Magnum because I mean, great that you sent it to me, but I'm trying to introduce as many people as possible to something, and to have ammo costs being eaten up on that, it's like, yo, help a brother out. One of those things. What is it? Just giving somebody a white elephant. It's like, great.
Thanks. Now, how do I feed it?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I got a white elephant. Now I have to feed it and groom it and take care of it and pick elephant poop up. Thanks, buddy.
Well, here's what I would do. You ever heard of those elephants where you feed them coffee, then they poop it, and it makes it worth more? You just start feeding elephants coffee.
I feed my elephants coffee beans so it poops them out and I can take them out. Now it's amazing.
Yep. Or cocoa beans. Mr. Knive is out there. We could have some elephant coffee and some elephant cocoa. And
when we make jokes and talk about things like, hey, who was the first person to convince other people to try milk? Right. What are you doing? All right, check what I did this weekend. I climbed under the cow, right? I saw the cow, right? And it was drinking milk. And I was like, well, milk is milk, right? It's like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, man. Hardest part was differentiate between the cow and a bull. Cow was annoyed. Bull keeps following me around.
Ozzy says there's no such thing as a free dog. That one's deep.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, sir. What was the other one? A friend of mine gave me, and look, I love him for it. I'm not even pooping on him. Thank you. I appreciate it. My friend gave me a black powder revolver because we were talking about it one day, and it's the same set that's always on sale in Cabela's. And that was one of my, oh man, I really want to get one of those guns one day, but you know, I'm not going to spend like $250. Well, my friend is an awesome dude, and he was in Atlantic City and won some money. And he didn't tell his wife about it because any money you lose is our money, but any money you lose is your money, but any money you win is our money. So he didn't tell her about winning, and he gave it to me for Christmas. He was like, "Hey, man, how much is that?" And I told him, and he was like, "Here, go buy it." So I went and purchased it. But the funny thing is, it doesn't come with nipples. Excuse me, not nipples. It doesn't come with percussion caps. It doesn't come with black powder.
Powder, yeah. And that can
Yeah, and
actually
it only comes.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I was so freaking happy I didn't care, bro.
Well, I
I
was just
bought
saying
it,
that
but I
not
did.
every shop sells black powder. Like usually you got to go around and find the shop or two that'll have it.
Yeah, well, luckily, again, it was a Cabela's thing, and that's Fud Central. So, of course, they had it, you know.
Oh, okay, okay. I didn't know Cabela's has it. Yeah, then it's easier than that, I
Yeah.
guess. Back in the day, it was
Yeah.
a
If you
pain.
look, how's this? If you find a place that sells 16 gauge shotgun shells, they'll probably have black powder too.
Yeah. I don't have the revolver. I have Derringers though, the single shots. I really like those.
Hmm.
Whenever I could buy them cheap, I used to buy them, and they're a lot of fun. I've got a flintlock and some percussion cap ones, so the flintlock adds a whole nother level of like having to figure it out. It's kind of neat. It's like a puzzle every time you shoot it. Did you end up getting caps yet?
Oh, I got caps. I ended up shooting it in a competition. Oh, I love that gun, dude.
Oh, that wasn't this
I got-
Christmas.
oh no, this was years ago.
Okay.
The funny part is, I'd never shot it. I hadn't gone to the range, so it was called the winter shoot. So it had to be in, I think, January. Yeah, it wasn't a Marine Corps shoot. It was the winter shoot. So I think it was in January. I forget what year. And I pull up, and it's still in the box from Cabela's. And this is what the point of the winter shoot is: American wars throughout American history. And there was a category for each. And this particular one, because it's a Remington 1858 clone, falls into Cold Harbor, which is Civil War. So the name of it was Cold Harbor, which is percussion cap black powder. Cool. Target's 50 yards away. It's a B8 NRA target. And I shot it using a black powder pistol versus dudes that were shooting a rifle. So I'm sitting there at the table and I have out the instruction manual, reading how to load a black powder revolver at the table at the competition. And the guys walk by and they go, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm shooting this." And they were like, "It's a rifle competition." I'm like, "Well, it's only 50 yards away and it's a pistol. I should be able to hit it." And they were like, "Good luck." So I loaded it up. And yes, it was 10 shots? 10 shots. You had to put 10 shots on target at 50 yards. Again, B8, which I think the black on a B8, I don't know if it's 8 inches or 4 inches. But I was able to I didn't miss it with one round. You know what I mean? Out of the 10, I did not miss. Now, I did not win, but I did not miss. I'm shooting a handgun, a 1858 clone handgun with gutter sights at 50 yards against dudes that were shooting Civil War era black powder rifles at 50 yards. So they beat me. But they were so impressed at the event that they actually put a picture of my target on the front page of the website when they talked about the shoot. I was honorable mention, which I thought was really cool.
That's pretty cool. Did you
I love
clean it out
shooting, bro.
after?
Oh hell yeah! Immediately, I took it out, sprayed it down with Windex, blew through it, and then cleaned it like you do a regular pistol. But you got to get rid of those. It attracts.
Stick or something? Or you had to pull
Yeah,
those
it
out?
attracts rust.
I
Yep.
don't do that,
So
but mine are $50 Derringers, so I don't really care, I guess.
I got lazy once, and it left some pitting on it, and I've been religious with it ever since. Um, because we were actually talking about running a class on black powder as a defensive handgun modern to be used defensively because we live in a state that makes it a pain in the ass to get a pistol purchase permit. You'll be waiting. And if there's a real threat to you and your family and you don't know anyone that owns a firearm, I'm like, okay, check it out. Jump in the freaking car, drive to Cabela's from Jersey, which is like a 2.5, 3 hour one-way trip. Buy this damn thing, and you can read it and load it and learn how to do that from videos. And that's the only way you're going to get a same day freaking firearm in the state of New Jersey. Under Chris Christie, at least he changed the law that if you're a woman, excuse me, if you have a restraining order against someone that's violent and they're still a threat, you're able to buy one. But the very first thing Phil Murphy did was change that and get rid of that law because, it saves somebody. I mean, it's just the dumbest shit because it saves no one. It helps no one. Making it harder for a domestic abuse victim to arm themselves against someone who wants to kill them somehow isn't a good idea. So we were looking at it. Look, you can bitch about a problem or you can help solve it. And we were trying to do both. So we wanted to put it out there. So I hooked up with one of my guys who ends up being one of my volunteers. And we did what do you call it? We did a preliminary run through and a mental exercise about how we'd run it. We were at the range. We had various black powder revolvers, and we talked our way through it, like what exercises we run, how fast, load it, what's the expectations of shot placement, what's good, what's bad, that kind of thing. Like how do you run a class with a black powder revolver that takes forever and a day to load comparatively? How good do you have to be with it? It's going to be single action, not double action. Um, there's a lot more involved in, do it the same way as you do any other handgun class. No, any other handgun's not going to take about 17 minutes to load. Not that long, but you know what I'm saying. A regular handgun class is going to take a little longer to load. You have to remove the entire cylinder out of the gun and put it back in. And that's easy if you're using a Remington, but what if you're using a Colt? Well, to reload a Colt cylinder, like to swap the cylinder out, you have to disassemble the gun. Like you got to knock the wedge out of the barrel to take that apart. So either you're on like, do you come with a table so everybody can sit down and load their gun up and then go back for the next training iteration? It's a thing. It's harder than it seems. It's more. It brings up more questions. Oh, that sucks. In Illinois, black powder is the same as any other firearm. That means you have to have an FID card for it. See, the crazy part about it is this, though. Once you drive across the border, you can buy one at any store. We're not talking about staying in line with the government. Like, because I love people to go, well, you can just cross over the border and buy a gun from the ghetto. Oh, really? Who you know in the ghetto? And where would do they have signs? Do you just stop and see the guy on the street corner? Sir, are you selling the weed? Are you selling the weed? Do you know anyone selling firearms illegally too? Trust me, I'm not the man. Like, how does that convo go? So no, black powder gives you an option. It freaking sucks. But you know what you won't look like in front of a jury of your peers because you bought a firearm because, the state you live in makes it difficult for you to protect the people you love. You won't look like a guy that showed up with an AR-15. You'll look like a guy that was in the crew of Captain Jack Sparrow. They can't call you a gun nut. It's like, yeah, I bought 1800s technology because when I tried to do it the correct way, there's so many barriers in front of me that it delayed me from protecting my family, and I needed something now. And that's just with the revolver handgun. You can also buy, of course, black powder. I go with percussion caps. You can also get hunting rifles, which has it set up differently, so you won't have to do it the old school way with a powder horn. I mean, they have solid pellets that you can use in modern black powder shotguns and black powder rifles. But I don't know how. I know the antique stuff is easier, but I don't know how much of a pain in the ass it is to use a modern black powder rifle. But those suckers are big.
Manual of arms, you mean?
Well, not manual of arms, but purchase it legally without having to go through the background checks and the paperwork in a non-free state. Because again, and we've had Carol Baum killed here, and that was a national news story for a while. That she was trying to get her, purchase permit, and of course they delayed her illegally, by the way. They violated state law when the local police chief delayed her past 41 days. And she was chased around her car and murdered in her own front yard by her ex. Now, any other time, and that's why Chris Christie passed the law to make it easier for someone that's a domestic violence victim or someone that put a restraining order on someone. He made he cut down on the amount of time that you could delay in getting them a pistol purchase permit and a firearms ID card because they get a woman killed. They got a woman murdered. And, typical bullcrap when it comes to laws. It was a woman, she was white, it was just right, and you can time it right. And that makes me sick because you can see it, on both sides of the spectrum. If they have a political agenda, if the victim looks right, they'll make it work. But if the victim doesn't look right, well, too bad, so sad, you're dead. That sucks. And you can apply it to anybody you want. Whatever popped in your head, yeah, I mean that. Whatever popped in your head first, yes, I mean that.
Yeah, it's all about like the, what do you say? Not the vibe, but like it's all about the current or the tide or whatever,
Hmm.
right? Like you say, if it's
Yep,
the right puzzle piece that they need, and it's often just because they can exploit it or they need the distraction, or
100%.
they just need the revenue or something. But yeah,
Hmm. And if I say anything specific, it'll cause somebody to start yelling at the radio. I'm like, whatever you think I'm talking about, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And the only reason I say it that way is because whatever you're right. You're right. Whoever's name that popped in your head, you're right. But doing what we do, three names popped in my head immediately.
when we talking like the dude in New York,
Uh, Dude, New York. And I'm just talking about people killed and then exploited, their deaths exploited and
killed. No,
used
I
for
was
others.
in jail. Okay,
No, 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 but killed. Yeah. I mean, Dexter's another one. Yeah. But Dexter is the gun people pushing it because the anti gunners don't even want to talk about him. Yeah, that's the way they handle stuff like that. If you don't talk about their racism, yeah, and it's something I heard today. You never hear the CIA deny the stories about them because if you deny it, you give them credibility and you have to actually talk about it. But if you just don't say anything, eventually it goes away. And that's the same thing about Dexter in New York City. The mainstream media doesn't say a word, and it's us, the firearms owner and Second Amendment advocates that are pushing the Dexter thing, but we're always in the echo chamber. Um, but when you talk about people getting killed and then their death being exploited by one side or the other, happens all the time. A
all right. Well,
black powder revolver is really cool. Um, you said you've got the Derringers, right?
they're not really derringers. I should say they're single shot, but they're as long as a revolver. They're like those. They're only
Hmm.
$50. They're nothing fancy. They're not the really short, cool like thing that the real Derringer started at, like the one that
Okay.
they shot President Lincoln with. I'm talking, it's like probably got an 8-inch barrel. It's got the normal size grip. It's the size of a revolver, but it's just single shot. The most simple. If you go look at a bunch of kits, it'll be like the most simple kit. And the only difference between
Mm.
them is one has the, what do you call those caps, and the other one has a flint.
Percussion caps. Yeah,
Yeah.
percussion caps. So my whole thing is I like them because they have a story and you can actually have them as a wall hanger and they can still be effective at putting people down today as they were back then. And one of the things we were talking about was how long can this thing stay loaded and still be effective? So I'm talking to my instructor that I was going to use for it. And he's like, as long as everything stays dry and nothing happens to the percussion cap, you're good to go. And he was like, and the chance of it getting, wet. Well, when you load it up, you load it. Uh, you, the last thing you do is put percussion caps on it. So you load the cylinder, it's powder, it's your wad, and then you put in, definitely if you're using a ball, you put in your ball, and that shaves off soft lead around the cylinder face, right? And so now that's airtight and watertight because it's form fitted around one end, and the only open end on the other side is a pinhole. And then on top of that, when you put it back in the revolver, you put a percussion cap on top. So unless you dunk that sucker in water and hold it under, you should be fine. So yeah, you can put it in your safe, and more than likely it would work. I mean, obviously test it, but there's very little chance that it won't work in your revolver if you use it for self defense. And again, the only reason I'm recommending it for something like that is if you live in a state that pretty much makes you a prohibited person until you get state permission to get the gun. And again, if you have a serious situation going on in your house where your family's life is under threat, well, you could be, what is it? You could be a law abiding citizen and dead, or you can be a responsible citizen and do what you need to do to save your family's life, but be safe with the firearm you get. Because that's how I see there's a difference in between being a responsible citizen and be a law abiding citizen. Nice. Gun. You saw what Guns and Water said, right?
3 years to test.
Yeah, he
Oh,
tested his for 3 years and they went off. So
interesting.
cool.
I was going to say they can get damp, but again, like,
Yeah,
are they, it would be like it would have to be a very damp environment, like on a boat or something.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It would have to be something like that because, again, why are you doing this? And also, if you're a felon, by the way, and people are like, well, why don't you ever say that about a felon? I'm like, listen, I understand when you think felon, you think of some dude that just got out that has tattoos all over his body and he can't wait to commit another crime. Well, that guy is going to get a real damn gun. But the dude that gets out of prison because he's done his time and he's trying to live his life, but now, and I threw this out there, it's not like, depends on how long you're in jail on a felony in prison, excuse me, not in jail, in prison on a felony. That affects your future jobs. What neighborhood are you going to live in? Who's going to hire you? Let's just say a whole bunch of felons get out. You're not probably moving into the best of neighborhoods. Well, how do you protect your family as somebody that tries to stay on the straight and narrow, but you're now a 40-something-year-old man or even older, and you're trying to protect your family or yourself? Firearm is a great equalizer, but you can't legally have one without going back to jail. And you really don't want to deal with the people it takes to get an illegal handgun because, well, you're going back to jail. Well, one thing you can do is buy a black powder handgun. And hey, there you are. You have something legal. And I mean, really, if you want to play with it, join one of those, what is it, cowboy action leagues. Come up with your own damn character and you can practice every week shooting that thing under a stressor and how fast you can shoot it and get good with it. And people won't even ask you a question about whether you're legal or not. Of course you're legal. Now you're in a cowboy action league shooting 100 rounds a weekend out of this thing under a stressor as fast and as accurately as possible. I would not want to mess with that guy.
And if you're driving a horse because you don't got a driver's license, nobody will even think about that.
Nobody even bother. Hey, look at that guy. Obviously, he's cool.
How authentic.
There was actually a guy who used a Walker black powder revolver, obviously a Walker clone, in a self-defense shooting in Virginia. I read about that and it blew me away. Well, he blew somebody away. He had the stupid thing, and that was his. I don't know why he was doing it. Maybe as actually a walking meme that he was carrying this 4.5 pound gun around with him. But someone actually tried to run over him in his complex parking lot, like physically tried to run him over when he went out to his car one day. And he thought it was a mistake, like the guy was just going too fast and on his phone and didn't look up until the last minute, and he had to jump out of the way. Well, you jump between the cars and you look like, what the hell was that? So he steps back out, and the guy turned around and was sitting there gunning the car like the movie Christine. And he floored it and went after him again. So this guy stepped back between the cars, pulled out his, I guess you can call it his smoke wagon, and shot one round, and it went through the driver's side door, hit the driver, and then I think it might have hit the passenger too. But that's 144 grain lead bullet if you use the Hornadies, which I use, and I think it was going between like 900 to 1,000 feet per second when it hit. So it killed one guy. One guy bled out because he caught it through the leg and the femoral artery. But it banged up two dudes. And you're 100% right, Ozzy. All felonies aren't violent felonies. I mean, hell, the president of Smith and Wesson at one time, one of the presidents of Smith and Wesson was a felon. How crazy is that? You own Smith and Wesson, but you can't handle any of your inventory.
Really, I didn't know about that.
Hmm. Yeah, he got arrested like 18 for something stupid. Was out of jail by the time he was out of prison by the time he was 23, and was able to live his life and obviously be a successful business person. But yeah, he was a felon. And one
I've
of
never
the
seen
worst
a
group of
history
people.
of Smith and Wesson that's like modern. They'll talk about Smith and
Mm,
Wesson, and that's about it. Like I haven't seen anything other than that. There must be stuff out there
what's that?
just to show
Must be
like a
stuff up there.
modern history of Smith and Wesson, because it's kind of
Mm.
it's owned by a big conglomerate now and stuff, and like just a
Well,
summary.
it's killed a lot of it. I mean, the only dude I know is Mike Bellevue, and Mike has a YouTube channel. He's also a writer for like three different firearms magazines, like Guns of the Old West and things like that. He was also a squid too. So every year I wish him a happy birthday on the Navy's birthday. But he does some stuff like that, talking about you know Smith and Wessons and guns of. I think the last video he made was guns of Gunsmoke, and he talked about the firearms that they had on the TV show Gunsmoke.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, his name. I think his okay. Here it is. His YouTube title is Duelist. Duelist 1954.
Oh, okay, I know that guy. Yeah,
Yeah, he did a really good one, I thought, on the guns of the Border Patrol. And he made some mistakes that people, of course, went after because he made some mistakes. Which, if you're talking about an institution like the Border Patrol, it ain't like they had hard and fast. You get this and you only get this. They didn't have that for a really long time, like an official Border Patrol only. Like this is the only gun you can use. This is the issue. But yeah, he did a good one. He did one on the Model 13 Smith, which was the last FBI's last issue revolver. I just have a hard time using gutter sights. And I really thought that 1858 had really good sights on it because it had such a long sight radius that I was able to shoot it accurately. But when it comes to cartridge revolvers, like modern gutter snub noses, really hard to shoot for me. My eyes just hit that thing weird. But it also is the same thing with buckhorn sights on lever actions.
I was gonna say it's like
It's
red dot
just,
also, just a different thing. You have to either get used to it or come up with it. Get accustomed to it when you're starting.
and that was my issue with my Henry Big Boy Steel. Like, I bought a bunch of 38. I had a bunch of 38 and I took it out and I'm trying to get good with it. I can shoot a regular rifle. I can shoot an AR. I can shoot stuff with a red dot. I can shoot handguns. But shooting that gun accurately bothered the hell out of me. So I just shot a letter to Henry because I talked to them at Great Shot Show, and I was like, "Hey," I said, "since you now have one with the loading gate, could I have another big boy still so we could use them at diversity shoots? Because I don't How am I teaching people that are introducing the firearms and Henry still use the tube like you load a 22? I'm like, now I'm pretty much putting my hand in front of the barrel when I'm loading this gun, and I'm trying to tell them it's a viable option modern day. But at the same time, I'm telling you not to put anything in front of the barrel. And it also makes it more difficult to load this in a port at an indoor range. So hopefully they give one to me, so I can use the diversity shoots, because, again, when you're muzzled by the state and your a jury of your peers are freaking firearms illiterate or firearms ignorant, having a modern lever action as your home defense gun ain't the worst idea. And I know people are going to go, what is this FUD talk? Look, there's a reality out there. I have to live with the laws that are in my state or suffer the consequences. If I tell somebody, okay, if you get an AR 15, one, you got to learn to run an AR. A lot of people are scared of ARs no matter what the hell I do. And I've seen it in my classes, that they have to come 5, 6, 7 times to events before, excuse me, usually it takes about 2 to 3 trips to my event before they'll shoot an AR 15. But they'll 100% shoot a lever action because it's a cowboy gun and way less intimidating. So I get your modern lever action. We put some 38s in it. We put a flashlight, a sling, and a red dot on it. No one's sticking around to see what you're shooting at them when you let loose with a 357 Magnum out of a 16-inch barrel. No one's waiting around. You're not at that much of a disadvantage as a civilian self-defender for the most part. Uh, work the lever, and you have another round on hand immediately, and it's probably faster than most pump action rifle shotguns. And again, a 357 Magnum out of a 16-inch barrel hits about as hard as a 30-30 or a 7.62 by 39, according to bullets by the inch, ballistics by the inch, because it hits it with about 1,000 foot-pounds of pressure, if I remember correct, off the top of my head. Okay,
We've talked about that
air
before.
guns.
Yeah. What does it
Yeah.
say? What he's asking about air guns?
Now, air guns are different because of, well, Jersey has rules on air guns that you can use for hunting, and I think it may even have ones you could use. Uh, they had one called the Bulldog, the 357 Bulldog, and it was from fudge, Benjamin. Yeah,
Yes.
Benjamin. So Benjamin had one, and they turned it into a damn gun that shoots freaking arrows. But that sucker shot 357, not 357, of course, rifle rounds, but it shot a heavier, bigger diameter lead ball that could be used for self defense. And it hit hard enough that it would be a self defense firearm. It had pick rail along the top for you to mount modern optics. And of course, when it has a pick rail along the top, you can also put a freaking flashlight on it with an offset, flashlight mount, because I actually have one by Viking Tactics that's inexpensive that'll hold a 1-inch diameter flashlight. So I like that as an alternative, but understand, and it had somewhat of a magazine that it would load the next round. It had a circular magazine. I think it held 6 or 8 rounds, and it uses pneumatic. It was air. It was, it had air on board. So I pretty much liked that as an idea, and I don't think it was too futuristic. It was a bullpup design, and I think it was too futuristic for some people that were traditional hunting with air rifles. Let me see if I can pull it up. I don't know. I was looking at it. I read a lot of reviews on it back at that time because I kind of liked it. And again, I do this whole, like, people that are stuck in a state like this, but they want a firearm now. Yep, 357 Bulldog. Oh, wow, cool. 2023. I just saw a review on it. It's the Benjamin Bulldog M357. I don't know. Oh, ooh, Pyramid air rifle, Benjamin air guns.
They're sometimes used for hunting. I don't know how often they're going to be like made for defense.
Holy Jesus! Yeah, well, this sucker has it for $900 now. I don't remember it being that expensive. It looks like they changed the design some. Now, my whole thing is, yeah, well, as a bullpup is not that long. It has a 357 bullet, which is 9 mil. They also have a 475. It hits muzzle with wow, muzzle energy for the 457, 450 foot-pounds. 450 foot-pounds. For the 357, or what they call 9 millimeter, is 9 millimeter. It's 300 foot-pounds of energy. But we're talking about a grand. But again, if you're a felon, no matter what, you're behind the eight ball on this one. So let me see. Okay, here we go.
That's
After
compressed air.
three,
So my attitude would be there's also, for that kind of money, it's probably going to be high quality, but at the same
yeah,
time, there's going to be the air leakage issue that is inevitable
mm,
with anything under pressure. Well, I shouldn't say inevitable, but potential for anything under pressure.
well, you can easily learn what it is and what it isn't. Where's your magazine? All right, it has a 3 round magazine for this specific thing, and it sounds like a real rifle. It looks mean as hell. It actually, it looks like you're one of the. Ah, it looks like a Storm Ship Trooper rifle. Want to know more? Click yes. Yep. Yeah, so I didn't know the upgrade. Last time I saw it and they were talking about it, they turned it into something that shot arrows. But even a 3 shot 457 is better than absolutely nothing. And people that want to poo poo that, I'm like, again, if you don't live in a free state, your options are sometimes limited and it sucks. Now, the 357 has a 5 shot rotary clip. And it hit with 300 foot-pounds of pressure when it's fully loaded. And for the first, if let me see, let's see if they do the first 3 shots in this too, because that's pretty much all you're going to get. Yep, first 3 shots. It still is over 700 feet per second, so it keeps the foot-pounds close to the same, 300 foot-pounds of pressure, which is 9 millimeter out of a 3.5 to 4 inch barrel. Oh, really? Hold on, Ozzy. Hold on a second. So it treats, if it's, get out of here. If it's over 900 feet per second, they consider it a real firearm. Well, the good news about the friggin' 457 is it only does 760 feet per second. So it won't qualify as a firearm. I mean, it's going to cost you a grand, but it's still under the foot per second rating. Dude, if you get dumped by a dude with an air rifle, you just had none of the luck.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, my mind goes to, if it's $1,000 to get one that's fancy, can you just modify an existing $50 one
Nope.
into, a nicer one?
Nope. And so reason I said it was so much is because I've already been there too.
Oh,
Um, yeah. Because again, you're stuck with, it's still physics, and the walls still have to hold up to that air pressure. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Yeah. So
And they're only made
then, I mean,
so much, so they're not going to overbuild it and then accidentally give
yep,
you something to do 6 times more than it can or something.
yep. Now you can make them stronger than normal. Like you can take, the Walmart. I think they call it the like Crossman American, which is that little pump action one that a lot of us had as a kid, the pump action pistol. And they have ways of adding all kinds of stuff to it that you can buy online and turn it into a carbine and turn it into a carbine that hits with the power of maybe a 22 short. So it's enough to be lethal to small game. And maybe if you shoot somebody, like if you shoot somebody, it's going to make enough noise that they're going to think it's a real gun. Especially when you put all this other stuff on it, it's going to look like a weird gun. But it might not make someone that's determined or angry or on mind altering drugs stop. But with this thing that costs $1,000 and then you have to get the pump, you know what I mean? And the best thing is the compressor to put the air in it. And then all the other expensive crap that goes with it. Yeah, you're spending over $1,000, but you have a firearm immediately that can stop a physical threat, being a man or being a bigger animal. Again, hitting at 400 foot-pounds. It can stop many things. It can stop whatever a 4-inch 357 Magnum can stop because that's about the foot-pounds of a 4-inch 357 Magnum.
But then the difference is a 4-inch 357 Magnum fits in your pocket or in your belt or in your purse, where the
Hmm.
rifle we're talking about is essentially a rifle.
Yeah, it's 36 inches long,
Yeah. So
which isn't long. Which isn't
I guess
long.
no, I mean in general scheme of things, I'm just saying like
Hmm.
uh,
It's
this has
not
been
very
an
good.
issue since there's been an issue since the beginning of having conversations online. Where do you there's X amount of attention to spend and time to spend and money to spend, and where do you spend it complying, and then where do you spend it getting rid of the issue? So theoretically over here on this side of the fence, it's a mental game for us, but y'all have to live with it, and you're all states that are dealing with this stuff, and to some extent we're all putting on blinders if we don't think we're one election away from having to deal with the same situation. And some of us, like Arizona, we've come pretty fucking close. um,
Hmm.
so so anyway, you know what I'm saying? Like it's always a debate on, the time we have together. Do we spend our time talking about how to comply, or do we spend our time talking about how to remove the laws? And I'm
Yeah.
just throwing that out there at the end. Like it's frustrating, but it's different when you're living with it versus when you're looking at people living with it, and going, oh man, you should just be fighting this, is easier to say than
Hmm.
it is to live day to day and then have to be thinking about like what is okay and what isn't, what works and what wouldn't. um
How long do I comply? How far do I go with compliance? How hard do you fight? So it's all in there, and it's
and if you
annoying
don't think it through,
because.
then it's just going to be an unknown. So maybe something like an air powered thing for lethal defense, that's going to be something that if you don't explore it, so every once in a while it should be explored. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I'm not saying it's
Hmm.
like an option necessarily. I'm just saying that it's worth exploring because that's the kind of situation that people are in. Sort of like, I guess, behind the Berlin Wall or something. Like, do we eat bread made out of sawdust, or do we, you know, to make the plaster into bread or something? Like, people have to talk about that shit because they were down to those kind of things. Like, it might seem like, hey, you should be talking about how to get rid of these laws, but you only got so much time, and if you just spend your time talking about how to get rid of them, then you also just have no guns. Like, what are you supposed to have for defense? Like, what are you supposed to have for going to the range or
Yeah,
whatever?
again, you have people that don't live in the situation and don't even think about it. And I'm not even blaming you if you don't. But when you start commenting on it and going, "Well,
Oh
you
yeah,
should,"
sure.
it's
I'm
like,
just trying to illustrate it. Yeah.
hmm yeah, because again, I'm doing this and I'm fighting the fight and I'm bringing people in. And I'm also giving them options sometime that if you live in a free state, why in the hell would you tell somebody to get a black powder pistol? Because of their lack of options.
Or might dismiss it like, oh, don't bother with that. And that's why I guess
Yeah.
I'm bringing it up is because if we don't pay attention to this ourselves, the only time we tend, like, based on previous experience, the only time we do pay attention to stuff is when y'all are under attack or we're all under attack. And that's just a
Hmm.
weak place to be. It's a weak position to operate from. So if you consider us in a war or not, we're definitely operatives. We're all doing stuff, so we can either collaborate and coordinate, or be susceptible to the enemy who is coordinated and what's the word? The other word I said, because they're all coming from the same. They're all getting their marching orders from the same place, and they know that we're pretty disorganized. And that's why I like to take just a moment at the end of a show like this, because we have to end it at some point here.
Yeah, pretty
That
much.
kind of focus on the fact that some of the stuff we're talking about, it's easy to dismiss, it's easy to ignore because you're not dealing with it, or like say you're interested, but you just have different priorities, and you think people should be paying more attention to different things. And I'm not telling you you're right or wrong. I'm just saying, hey, let's just be aware of this, because, and we don't have to wait till we're fighting or defending ourselves from the antis to come together. We should be coming together all the time. I really think we should have 5-to-1 sister states. There's only 9 states that are getting abused right now. There could be a 5-to-1 mix of sister
Hmm.
states where, like these 5 states help New Jersey. These 5 states help Nevada, or not Nevada, Colorado. I always mix those two. And then, these 5 states help Washington. And financially, legislatively, socially, and just, where do you get your volunteers from? Oh, those 5 states. Doom on the antis to try to come up with a way to fight against that. Once we put that in motion, if something like that were to be put in motion, I'm not saying that, but something were to be put in motion, it'd be very difficult for them to compete against it, because we've got all the right on our side, every definition of right on our side, including right-handed people, which is all you need. Um,
So, go ahead,
so what is it
because
saying?
we got
Is
to
the
end
sky
this sometime,
falling
man.
or not? Is the sky
Sky's
falling or
always falling. Sky's always falling, bro. Sky's always falling somewhere.
Skynet will be falling once we get to it?
So, yeah, my whole thing is, when do you get in? When do you get out? How long does the fight go? The fight's generational. It's never gonna end. If you have something going on and you go, dude, I can't continue doing this because I got real life happening. Nothing wrong with taking a step back, dude. Nobody's gonna blame you, and if somebody does, they probably do way less than you've done, and they talk smack about everybody. So
Yeah,
ignore
because if
those
you're a
people.
spectator, it's easy, right? Like, oh man, look at
Yeah,
that. It's easy.
yeah.
Like, why aren't they
You
keep
should
running?
get it.
That's easy to run. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
easy
should.
to run.
Yeah, yeah. You should get in there and do something. It's like, what? I'm doing something, but I only have
I'm
so
watching
much
like
time and money.
I'm watching 8 people running, and you're getting tired. Come on, from my angle, it's easy. Let's keep going. There's 8 other people.
Yeah, come on, dude. Quit being a wuss. And you're 100% right. So yeah, sky's always falling. This fight is always going on. You can take breaks. You can get in it and find somebody to support. And like Chris did last week, he donated money to us. Well, guess what? That money helped because at at We Shoot this week, we have Kava, which is a Jewish. Excuse me, I don't know if they're Jewish, but they make kosher. It is a kosher deli slash restaurant, and they provided 3 pizzas for us. Well, we have almost 30 people, so I purchased 3 additional pizzas that were non kosher, or as I say, good pizzas, and we had those. And then I picked up drinks, so it cost me $78. Chris donated pizza money for last week's diversity shoot because it doesn't take much. So I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks a lot. That actually got people fed. And of course, the only reason I make jokes about the kosher pizza is because people laugh at it, and it's like, all right, cool, and it was good. I mean, people really liked it. But I was like, oh yeah, we got kosher pizza, and then we have good pizza. I would say regular, and people would get that, but say good pizza, it makes it funnier. And my whole thing is to get people to laugh at anything and everything because every time you laugh doesn't mean you're putting somebody else down. And I use humor a lot in my diversity shoot because I think that's the way we get through a lot. I mean, that's the way we got through racism. That's the way we beat racism down. If you look at the comedies we were watching and what was freaking hilarious in the classic 1970s, and I understand the 1970s, everyone acted like it was forever after the Civil Rights Amendment. I'm like, 2 years after the Civil Rights Amendment was passed was 1970. I'm like, Blazing Saddles was hilarious, and all the Norman Lear sitcoms brought racism to the forefront and talked about how stupid it was, and that helped push America through that stupidity. Humor, and that's what I use at diversity shoots. Nice.
When we would have conversations, that kind of reminds me of, I don't remember when anymore. This was a long time ago, though. So maybe like the first or second generation of online conversations. So like 2012, maybe. Anyway, the idea of, is there a way to have like, I don't want to say superstar, but like uh, actor. I don't think a musician could do it, but maybe a musician. But is there a way for like the same way that I don't want to say media because I think that's different. Celebrity. Is there a way that celebrities could, with the right messaging, affect the perception of gun owners and gun ownership in the country? And whether that be somebody like a Terran Tactical or Canoe Reeves, gives them the whole idea of like, take a person to the range, like actually hands on shows them that it's cool and they got nothing to be afraid of. Or if it's maybe like a pushed effort with a bunch of money behind it from somebody who thinks it's a good strategy and like puts some effort into it, maybe hires them for some movies where they, like Red Dawn. Like I don't think you see anybody from the movie Red Dawn going around saying guns are bad. Like they're just from doing that movie and understanding them. They may understand guns are like a hobby they don't want, or like guns are like a technical machine that they think is annoying, but they don't hate the concept of guns or gun ownership. Like they understand it. And I don't know if everybody has to do Red Dawn or be in a Red Dawn movie, but anyway, that reminded me of like back in the day we would sit around. I don't think we ever came up with any kind of answer. There would be people that
Mhm.
would throw some ideas out there, but I don't know if I'm even questioning or if it's just reminiscing.
So, in my opinion, and this is just mine, I don't the
Like they
celebrity
don't have
that
the effect
rescues
or they
us.
wouldn't do it, or
Yeah, the celebrity that does this, like, what is their motivation behind it? Where did they go? What is their thoughts on it? Is it going to be and then it's just me being a dick thinking about all the negative. But my question is, what's their agenda? What are they pushing? Um, like where does their stop at? Are they like an absolutist like me, or do they go, yeah, some training should be mandatory, and then that's where they stop at it. But and now all of a sudden there's an agenda there that I find repugnant. Um, because you can't pick everybody that's on your team, and you can be allies up to a certain point. We have a fight to win, so I can be on the same side as the person that thinks mandatory training is a necessity. But I'm like, all right, let's try to get no mandatory training because you can't trust the government because New Jersey itself changed what mandatory training was 3 times and didn't grandfather anybody in from the previous two. So people paid over $250 to $300 each time. I was like, government can't be trusted. So slow that one down. But
I'd
we
like
can
to think
ally
that
with them.
person who would be a mandatory person, like guns are okay with mandatory training. I like to think that
Mhm.
that person is either like never really put any thought into it and it just sounds comfortable to them or some reason,
Yeah.
or there's some kind of like really fuddy fitted. What's the word? Like for somebody that really thinks everybody is needs that kind of thing, or
Or
somebody
third,
who's anti. Well, I was gonna say an anti who's just stepping their toe in the water to be in a gun person is that need they need that comfortability. And that's the person. I don't know how many of them there is or might be, but that's the person you wouldn't want to alienate by just dismissing that position
Yep.
completely. You want to allow the position to exist as long as you understand that some positions are transitional. Hopefully, on the transition to like, hey, I understand your trepidation or whatever for that, whereas that you're concerned, but there's no need to be concerned. Like all these states, nobody has to do nothing. Like for all the time, people just own guns and
Hmm.
nobody had accidents. We all can have hot pots in our kitchen and we rarely ever throw them at each other. Like, even though we can, like every single day, somebody could throw a hot pot of macaroni and cheese at somebody. We almost never do that. I say that because I don't think we hardly ever do that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but we tend to not want to hurt each other, and that's no different with firearms. Firearms don't magically make you feel immune to any consequences, and you know what I mean. If anything, guns are so dangerous that most people walk around on pins and needles when they've got their guns around.
And the fourth person that you don't mention because it's so repugnant that you really don't think about it is the firearms trainer that insists because they make money off mandatory training because they're turds.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good point. I don't think about it from that angle, but that is definitely a position into
I
that
didn't even
person's
know.
like gun owner butt.
Well, yeah, my whole thing with those assholes, and I didn't even know they existed because my mind didn't go there either until there was mandatory training in certain places after Bruin, and all of a sudden they surfaced their freaking dirty little heads in Colorado. There was a couple here in New Jersey that were like, "Yes, mandatory training is good. It should be there. It's irresponsible not to." And I'm like, you know what you're doing? You're doing it because it's financially good for you. You're not doing it because you really freaking care. Because immediately afterwards, like I said, within 3 months of them going, all right, here are the rules, which, by the way, were the exact same testing that police have to take in New Jersey. You know what I mean? The police testing. So it was the exact same thing, exact same distances. It was the same test. It was even the same low light test. So, excuse me, qualifications. Yes. It was the same police quals, including low light. So you still had to shoot with a flashlight in your hand or a flashlight on your weapon. And it was the low light course. And you still had to take cover. You still had to do weekend only. And you had to take their deadly force class. Okay, cool. Makes sense. It's the same one as the police. Now, we were using that police argument. They were using the police qualification argument is if we pass the same quals as the police, then we should be able to carry where police do. There shouldn't be a whole bunch of just arbitrary places you can't carry. So they changed it and go, yeah, they changed one part of it. You don't have to do the whole police course. You can do the partial police course. Or you didn't have to do the night shoot. That's what it was. But everybody had to requalify that took it first. So that means a whole new set of fees and everything. And then they changed it a third time away from the police thing, away from the police qualifications. They dropped the 25-yard line, took it down to 15 yards, and didn't make position shooting mandatory. And yes, you had to start all over again if you had one of the first two. It didn't renew and it didn't grandfather in. So, oh yeah, and you have to renew it every 2 years. So every 2 years, you're going to have to pay a couple of $100 on top of whatever you already pay to maintain your proficiency to get the renewal done. It's like you people are assholes. So that's why I push back against all gun control because my first answer is always going to be no, because the state's going to set itself up to dictate to you what you can carry and when you can carry. And it never is for our safety. And it's never done out of the kindness of their hearts. It's always done to set you up and take power away from you, the individual. All right, dude. Yeah, let's go ahead and end this because I'm on my little soapbox.
I'm coughing over here. Okay, so then yeah, why don't we say thanks to everybody who is joining us on the different platforms. We had some interactivity from all everything except X, I think, today. But we'll be back next week, I think.
You.
And if you have questions, feel free to ask them over at the AskGunQuestions.com. It's actually been a couple of weeks since I've even looked at that database or that spreadsheet where they're at. So maybe we'll remember to do that next week. But also give us some feedback on this vertical. I don't really like it. It bothers me. It seems like such a waste of my computer space here. But if people like it on the viewer side, we definitely seem to have more people on Instagram today.
I often wonder when we have people on Instagram, how many of them are yelling about the crazy things I say, yelling at their phone.
Seriously, they don't say nothing, so I don't get it. I know it's also a pain, if I remember right, watching other people's. It's not necessarily easy because, well, at least when there
Uh-huh.
are comments coming up, they go by so fast that by the time you say something, the person watching is like, what? Because, the comment is kind of lagged or whatever.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. And I'm not going to play the exit stuff because it's pretty mixed up on my setup here. But eventually, soon we'll have an exit, or I'll play this for the exit.